bringing this to the board in March. Our social studies standards were approved by the state board in November of 2019. We just need to revise the date. It says December 2012 on there. We need to push it to November 2019, which states that we are going to adopt the standards that the state provides. We have two options. We can either adopt the state standards, or we can choose to create our own standards, which are equal to in rigor or more rigorous. And so we just choose to adopt what the state gives us. Any questions about the social studies standards?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Alexander's going to tell us about cyber insurance.
Yes, so, interesting topic. Learned more than I ever planned on knowing about cybersecurity and cyber insurance, but as you know, this is a growing concern among many public entities across our country, not just Beatrice, but everywhere. You don't have to look too far outside of Beatrice to find public entities that have been hit by this, including our own city. So it is something that we need to continue to look into. I have had a conversation, we've had a conversation with Grant Jones, who provides our current property insurance and liability insurance. And so, like I said, it was an interesting learning experience, but most pirates that are out there are after personal or financial information to hold hostage to be ransomed, and at that point, that's where, in order to get that information back, that personal information back, you have to pay the ransom, or you have to figure out how to hack it back. And so it's an interesting scenario, but the schemes and situations vary from attack to attack on how cyber security is breached. But we've been working with our insurance provider to get quotes. So there's two quotes there for you. One is from a company called Travelers, and the other one's from Great American. And so just for information, these terms run about $6,000. A total term premium runs about $6,900, all the way up to, you could go way beyond that. But the two that we're looking at are between $6,000 to $8,000. In discussion with Grant, he kind of recommended the Travelers. Is that right, Danielle? Mm-hmm. And so I guess that information is there for you if you have any thoughts or questions about that between now and March. My recommendation will be to look at adding this into our insurance policy as soon as we can, in order to make sure that we don't become victim to cyber security attacks in the near future.
Okay, that information is there where?
It's on Spark. Sorry, we didn't print the whole quote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's on Spark. So we can get you the packets.
That's okay. When you just said it's there, I didn't know where there is.
Where there is. That makes sense. So, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Alexander and Dr. Nielsen will present information about the strategic plan proposals.
Yes, and we did print this for you because it's kind of a one-page document. And what we try to do on the basis of the three presentations we've had, and then the fourth one is in Emilson LLC. We didn't have them come in just because of the sheer cost of their proposals, but they are available if you'd like to hear from them. So we've heard from NASB, Mission Matters, and Cambridge Strategic Services. We did try and pull out some of the proposal details for you in the middle column, and then also the cost attached to that on the far right. So you can see what the difference is from a 1,000-foot view of the three presentations that we did have come in. I guess what we're going to need to do, what I recommend that we do, is in March, be prepared to make a decision about which one of these organizations we would like to move forward with on strategic planning, so we can get that process in place and start moving forward with that, and get all of our ducks in a row, so to speak, towards that. So there is a wealth of a packet of information. I think you each got that from Mission Matters. I'm not sure if you've gotten that from Cambridge Strategic Services, but we can send that to you so you can do more research if you want to, but this is just kind of the highlights of those three companies. And if there's any discussion that you want to have tonight about it, we can sure dive into that. But
Can you tell me what other schools have used some of these services?
In terms of NASB, multiple schools across the state have used them, obviously, as the Nebraska Association of School Boards.
But like Class B schools, maybe that have used them.
Nebraska City's currently using them.
Yep.
I know that one.
And I think Bennington is, but don't quote me on that, would be another one from Nebraska Association of School Boards. It is in the pamphlet of information. that they
Okay,
give
maybe
to
you
us.
could,
Yeah.
maybe you could just send us that when you find it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mission Matters, I know Mission Matters hasn't, they've worked more with school foundations more than they have school boards. But they do have some experience in strategic planning that way. And then Cambridge Strategic Services is currently working with Papillion La Vista. That's why Kevin was able to come in that night and give his presentations, because he was just down the street at Papillion La Vista, so,
And they've worked with Seward previously as well.
yes.
Cambridge, yeah.
Have you had thoughts on your comfort level with any of these groups? Between you and Jackie?
We've had a lot of discussion. You know what, the School Board Association does a lot of great things, and I think that they have a lot of great services out there. I guess I'm not sure that on the basis of the presentation, that would be my recommendation. So I'll just say that off the top. Not that they wouldn't do a great job, but I just think that Mission Matters is probably going to be a little more dynamic and probably going to bring us a little bit different perspective, because they do work with other organizations like our Engage, they work there, so there's already kind of a community tie. But the thing that I feel like they're missing is probably that school piece that Cambridge Strategic Services would be able to bring us. And I think that they are probably leading experts in the field in regards to what it is in our discussions that we would like to have from a strategic planning services process.
Thanks.
Yep. So we can get those documents uploaded and sent to you so you can dig further into them.
Could you please not send them in Google?
Yes, we'll put them in a PDF.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question on the Cambridge action phase 3, where it says monitoring progress. Is that just through the strategic planning process, or is that as we're implementing, or what does that encompass? Do you know?
The way, go ahead.
I think it was actual follow-ups. I'll try and pull it up, but I
Okay.
think it
That's
was
what I was
a number,
curious
like
about.
at least an annual follow-up, but let me see if I have that on here.
That adds a lot of value.
Yes.
His presentation was very lengthy, but I thought it was, I think he hit on a lot of points that we need to address with the strategic plan. I was impressed with that one.
And I think that's a great question, because I think in regards to what we want to see move forward, when we get that strategic planning process complete and we are in the stages of implementation, it would be nice to have follow-up to bring us all back together and focus on those things.
It's one, I guess. Board charges superintendent to implement the plan, monitoring of implementation progress throughout the year. The third strategic planning team meeting is a year into the process.
Thank you.
Does the cost for Cambridge include all travel, or is there additional travel attached to that cost?
My understanding was it was all inclusive, but I can make sure and ask that question
Okay.
before the March meeting. Just for clarity, to make sure.
Because it's really hard to compare the Mission Matters in Cambridge. They've got so much more experience with schools, but also the amount of time that they're proposing to be here, you know. And I don't know, I just think it's hard to compare.
It is. And the thing that I like about Mission Matters is I think Kayla would allow us to tailor it a little bit to how we want, or to the number of meetings that we want. So she's trying to give us that leverage. Cambridge is going to maybe not give us quite that amount of leverage, but I think, again, the school piece is going to be more focused, so.
His presentation was really good. Any other questions? Mr. Alexander, Dr. Nielsen, who's that? Yeah, her too. We're gonna give us a budget and staffing update.
All right. First of all, before we get too far into this, I want to thank, we have I'm sure a large group of audience members who are here to be part of this discussion, so I want to thank you for taking the time to be here and hear what our presentation is about and what our discussion is about. That shows concern, which obviously we want to make sure that we have in all aspects of our schooling and what's going on. After that, I would also like to say that a thank you to a group of people, some here and some not, but a thank you to our principals, counselors, and our departments that have been so willing to work with us and help us find solutions to meet student needs, as well as work toward a balanced, sustainable budget. And I emphasize that part because we have to, and we obviously want to address student needs to the extent of whatever we can. But we also have parameters that we have to work within to do that. And I think Mr. Suter, Mr. Drosh, our elementary principals, have all been awesome. Beth's been awesome and sped to work with, and so I can't say thanks enough for their discussions. Our counselors have met with us a couple times and been great sources of information. And Dr. Nielsen has put in a ton of time in digging into data and research to help guide this discussion and give you as board members as much information as you can, and work with our departments to make sure that we're providing you as much information as we can. So with that, I'm going to dive in here, and I'm going to answer the question of why are we doing this first? Because I think that's a major question. What got us to where we are to have this discussion? And in thinking about how to explain this the best, I like to talk with visuals. So I brought a couple visuals that I've been informed by my esteemed assistant, administrative assistant Danielle, that they're not high quality photos, but you get what you get, don't throw a fit, all right? This kind of explains where we are. And in terms of, and you as board members know this, you've heard me, you're sick of hearing me talk about it, I'm sure. But our budget is at a point where our expenses are higher than what our revenue is. And so the seams of our budget are stretched to a maximum capacity right now. You in your homes, in your home budgets, you know what your revenue is, and you would not spend more than what your revenue is, because essentially what that results in is not having anything, or having to operate on a line of credit or go into debt. And that's not good business practice. So this is the visual that I try and present to you to understand it. The next one is no more than my own hand drawings. Nothing fancy. Miss Cherry, our high school art teacher, would probably give me an F on it, but I hope it explains a little bit about where we are and what it represents. So if you think of our school budget as a sink, and you think about it as we have revenue that comes in and we have expenditures that go out. Okay? Very simple. It doesn't have to be complex. And if you take the leanest month of the budget cycle, which is April, that's true for all schools, because you get a big tax burst in September and you get a big tax burst in May, and between December and April, your revenue is very lean, or the money you have coming in to support your expenses is very lean. So in April of 2017, in our cash reserve, so this is back before I was even here, we had $6.4 million in cash reserve. In April of 2018, you could see that it dropped about $900,000 to $5.6 million of cash reserve. Again, before my time here. In April of 2019, now I put this one in silver, it went up a little bit to $5.7 million of cash reserve, and there's an explanation for that. Partially, these reductions that we've talked about making in the past, we've made some of those, and so that helped. Partially, we had money come in that we've been waiting on to come in through federal grant funds, title, IDEA, and ELO grant money started to come in. Okay? And we've been able to get, so that helped out a little bit. So in 2017, 18, we saw it drop almost 900,000, but you see the money that we got back did not make up that full loss of $900,000. As we look forward and make projections in April 2020, we project that that cash reserve is going to drop further and further and further. Now, the problem with that is, just like in your own home budgets, when that cash reserve drops to a point because your expenditures are going faster than what your revenue is refilling the sink, this is simple as I can make it, you get to a position where you have to operate on a line of credit or borrow money. And you all know that when you borrow money, there's an interest fee on that as well. That's just not good business practice. Okay? Sometimes you have to do it. I understand when you buy a home, when you buy a car, you have to borrow money. But when you're paying salaries and benefits at 85% of your budget, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So taking that simple picture and looking at the projection of $5.3 million this April, and then knowing that our input costs of insurance, benefits, salaries, utilities, fuel, textbooks, which we haven't purchased in how long?
3 years.
Technology. Those costs are not going down. In other words, the expenditures are not slowing down. That's really the only thing we can control, because our revenue is capped at $1.05. So the little faucet at the top, we can't magically just turn that on and get more coming in to the sink. That's capped by a $1.05 levy limit. It's capped by a spending authority. It's capped by all types of things, state aid, the amount of state aid that we get, that fill our sink. And as you can see, our sink is there's getting to be less and less and less water in it to be able to take care of the things that we want. Now, with that said, as we continue to look into the future, we know that we will continue to have rising input costs, as I said. We have to evaluate every position that comes open, because there's only 2 ways to work on reducing those expenditures. And Beatrice has done a lot of work in the previous years of trying to reduce them outside of areas from the classroom. You know, we've made, there's been reductions made in a lot of other areas, and those are listed there. Building classroom expenses were reduced last year, 15%. Maintenance and buildings expenses budgets being reduced 10%. Personnel reductions of 1.0 FTE elementary teacher. You remember that discussion from last year. District office personnel reductions of 1.0 FTE. That's our office. And that doesn't include the student services reductions that were made many years ago. Textbook updates have been reduced 15%. Technology expenses reduced. So you get the picture, is that these reductions have been made in previous years to accomplish what it is that we need to accomplish and keep moving forward. I will say that this is it's not a fun discussion, I understand that, but it is a discussion that we're forced to have because, again, the revenue cycle does not come in, or the revenue cycle does not continue to increase. So that is probably as simple as I can keep the budget part of it for you. There's obviously many more tentacles that extend out from that, but I want to keep it simple in order to allow a lot of discussion and questions and concise. As we talk about these reductions, I think it's also important this year to look at the timeline of events that have occurred in discussions that we've been having to address this issue. And before I get to it, those timelines, I want to also say there's opportunity here because of other things, other discussions that we've had with our principals, with Southeast Community College, with our department chairs who have been awesome in coming up with solutions to help us solve this problem of how do we reduce our expenses but still continue to offer opportunities to our students. And that's what we've been able to do. We have some plans that we're going to lay out for you pretty closely. But in our timeline of events, previous years, these recommendations have been made clear back to, Jackie and I were talking today, clear back to 2012. You know that these reductions have been made, and it's not fun. But in essence, this problem will not be resolved until the funding of public education becomes a priority at the state level. And that's a battle we fight every day. But our taxpayers have carried the lion's share of funding schools in our state for many years. You know that too. That's all very public in what's going on in the legislature right now. November of this year, we met with our administration to evaluate the current average monthly expenses and revenue that we get in. Currently, we spend about $2.1 million. That's all inclusive. That's salaries, benefits, and bills. So we average about $2.1 to $2.2 million in expenses per month. Our revenue estimate is about 1.8 on most months, with the exception of September and May when we get the tax collection infusion. When we met in November, we reviewed where we've been with the sync type method. We talked about where our protocols have been and what we have to do for the 1920 budget cycle. We established a protocol with our administrative team that before any position was advertised for, we were going to have to discuss that advertisement or whether or not we were going to rehire. And everybody agreed that we were going to have to look at every resignation with a fine-tooth comb or retirement with a fine-tooth comb and decide what we were going to do moving forward. We discussed the needs to evaluate those in that manner. And finally, we set a goal for ourselves to focus on attrition when the opportunity presents itself rather than reduction in force, because that's just not fun for anybody. There is no part of me that wants to hire a teacher this year, and because we don't have the money to make payroll next year, look at that teacher and say, I'm sorry, we brought you to our district, but now we can't afford to have you. So attrition becomes the most logical, humane method to approach that. We challenged our principals to look and focus on forward thinking rather than being reactive. If we continue with the sync the way we are right now, we're going to end up being reactive and having to borrow money instead of being proactive and addressing it as we can, step by step right now. So we challenged our principals to start thinking of forward ways that we could address this. They've done an awesome job of working with us, and I can't thank them enough. December and February, we started receiving resignations and retirements. We've evaluated current numbers and student numbers of class sizes through the enrollment process. We've worked and met tirelessly amongst our administrative team, every administrative team meeting consisting of discussions about what are we going to do moving forward with these. We've worked with administrators to answer the question, can we move forward without this position? As a resignation came up or a retirement came up, can we move forward without this resignation? And if so, how? How are we going to do it? Think outside of the box. Are there different things that we can do other than just eliminate the position? In February, we worked on problem solving with administration, guidance counselors, met with staff to ensure the programs maintain the following things. Sustainability meets our district graduation requirements, English 40 hours, science, math, social studies 30 hours, so we look at those things very, very intricately. We know we have state standard requirements we have to meet, Rule 10 requirements we have to meet, but most importantly, we want to be driven by the best education practices, which include peer modeling. And I know this is a lot of jargon that maybe you don't understand completely, but peer modeling, inclusive classrooms, and focused on student needs. Those are 3 key things we want to have. And we wanted to keep our course numbers at a manageable rate. Teachers were not asked to teach, and we don't want teachers to ask more than they should or can. So we tried to do some comparisons. With that, we have a proposal that I told you would be coming and that we would have to discuss. So I'm going to show you the proposal, and then we're going to talk about the plan of how we can accomplish it. And I'm going to have Dr. Nielsen walk you through that plan. So we've talked about the elimination of orchestra before. Again, not something that we want to do, but it's a program where we have about 6 to 8 students, 2 of which come to us from another school. And so we're asking for that to be considered again. We have a high school Spanish teacher that is going on sabbatical for a year. It's only a 1-year savings, but it helps get us 1 year closer to what might be, you can only hope, more help in the resource area in the future. So we wouldn't replace that Spanish teacher for the year, and then a year from now we would look out and see what our options are. Any other high school opening if it's available, we just estimated the cost here. We know we have a high school science teacher, high school science position that's open right now. That's the estimated cost savings we would see on that. Reducing a middle school science social studies teacher, 1 by 1.0 FTE would basically bring us that savings. Then middle school science teacher, because we currently have that position open. Mr. Nis has taken an administrative position with a different district, so we've looked at student numbers and we've said, can we replace that? Or can we go without replacing it? And basically what we've come to the conclusion of is that based on our enrollment numbers, next year would be a tough year to do that. But the following year, knowing what our enrollment number will be coming into 6th through 8th grade, we can make that reduction next year. What we would do is take a teacher from our elementary, move them up to teach the science for another year, and then after we get a smaller class size in there, we move that teacher back down because our elementary numbers show that they're going to be needed back there in the following year after that.
Is there somebody that has that expertise?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Paraeducators, we're looking at, and this is dependent upon, we're going to have to take a look at what our special education needs are as we get closer to the start of next year, but we're looking at possibly reducing 2 paraeducators. We know that, as I mentioned earlier, our input costs are not going to get cheaper. This year we're in a contract with Mid-States that's locked in, but next year we will see a 6% increase in our transportation costs from Mid-States that a lot of other schools are seeing this year, but because we had a 2-year contract, we're not having that this year. A year from now, we're probably going to be having a discussion about transportation, and are we going to continue that full set of routes that we offer right now, or are we going to try and reduce that? So that's up there, but it doesn't have any cost savings attached to it. I just want to prepare you ahead of time. Maintenance department, we're down 1 right now because we've been looking for someone, but we haven't had any applications. So by accident, we've had a $40,744 savings at this point in personnel. You know the plan we've put together with the technology director partnership with ESU 5, which saves us $40,000, but it doesn't really, because we're going to have to put that back into the budget to pay for our technology that we know is going to need upgraded. Side note to that is you did vote to go into a lease agreement But Dave then, about 2 days after you voted to go into that lease agreement, found out that our Chromebooks were good for another year in terms of their updates. So we didn't enter into that lease agreement. We won't have to for another year. So we're able to shift that back 1 more year. Last thing is, we're going to eliminate printing, stuffing, and processing of monthly pay stubs. And that sounds like a little thing, but when you factor in the time it takes, the ink it takes to print it, the envelopes it takes to stuff it, the processing of that totaling, it's about $2,500 a year. So that's not big, but again, it's another thing that's not directly attached to the classroom we can do that results in some savings. All total, when all of these things are done, that's about $458,000 of savings. That's almost equivalent to what insurance increase are going to be and staff salary increases are going to be for the year when it's all said and done. Now obviously we haven't negotiated, we haven't worked with classified staff salaries or administrative staff salaries yet, but when we look at it, that's what we're looking at. Now we do have cash reserve, so that list represents that number. And depending on what happens in the next few months, if we could get somewhere around $400,000, I think if we have to rely on our cash reserve for $58,000, we can do that. And hopefully, we'll see some relief from the state, but I wouldn't bank on it. So that's our proposal. The next question that you would have, I would expect as board members, is okay, great, Mr. Alexander, that all looks fine. How the heck are we going to do it? Well, that's where I'm going to say, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nielsen, who has done a plethora of work, and our principals to help with this explanation of how we get all that accomplished.
Okay, so one of the things that I have spent time looking at is, first of all, the high school Spanish teacher. Because we know that Salome Ossing Dodge also provides our EL services, so that is huge. We have students in our district that need EL services. So what we are looking at with her position is we are looking at affording her extra days. So on top of her contract, affording her 13 extra days to help provide those services throughout the year. So she will have to do those on top of what she is teaching. So she will still have a full schedule with the Spanish courses because we have to. But the nice thing is that we have one fantastic para and another para in mind to help supplement some of those services. We have one para who's currently working at Lincoln Elementary, and she goes over to Stoddard. She spends time at the high school and makes sure that our students are getting what they need and works with them. And the nice thing is she's very fluent in Spanish. She also spends time at the preschool because we do have a new family that moved in roughly about December timeframe, November timeframe, I want to say, and she's done a lot with them. So I feel very confident that that piece will flow pretty smoothly. And I have met with Salome. I've also talked to the state about making sure that we are in the parameters if we would move forward that way. And since we have very few, I mean, our EL population is actually pretty small. So we're talking about 15 students, and she said most of the time what happens with your EL population, especially if they're that small, it really is more that inclusive. It really is more that they are in the classroom, they are in all classes, and then you just provide those supports on top of what they're currently getting in the classroom. So that is the piece that we are working on with the high school Spanish piece right now. With the high school science teacher opening and the middle school social studies teacher opening and even the middle school science teacher and the other high school opening, one of the things that you have in front of me are numbers, or in front of you are numbers. You have a list of staff teaching at the middle school, and you have the list of their current numbers that are in their classes. So we take a look at the numbers. Our goal is to look at probably 23 to 25 in a section. That would be kind of our average. So if you look, you can see where middle school classrooms are. You can also see where high school classrooms are, and one of the things that you notice with the high school classes is that we took and color-coded them as well. So if you have troubles understanding the colors, just let me know and I will help you figure out which one it is. But there are a lot of different courses that we offer, and we looked at that, maybe looked at some efficiencies, looked at some inefficiencies. Where do we maybe have 3 or 4 sections and maybe go down to 2 or 3 sections? What courses are running at a low rate? What courses do we maybe have 6 students in or 3 students in, and should we be offering those courses? So I think we need to continue to ask ourselves, are we offering the courses we need to offer, or do we have students in there that we need to have, or how can we recruit more students to get them into those courses? How can we ensure that the courses are full and push them to where they need to be? Couple of the other things that we have looked at with the is I've also reached out to a couple of the other schools around us, and primarily Class B schools. One of the things that you can see in this document is you have the school, but you have the number of science teachers, and this will be for next year. And then you can see the number of students. This is total students 9 through 12. With the science piece, you do know that, or note that they only need 30 credits, so really a student could take science, their freshman, sophomore, and junior level. However, we do like students to take 4 years of science as well if they want that opportunity, so that is there. The other thing that we looked at were course offerings, the number of offerings the number of classes, so the number of courses in the district. And that was kind of where we saw a little bit of a discrepancy between us and other districts. You can see that we have 20 different course offerings, but you can see Blair, the rest of them are probably averaging around 11 or 12 course offerings. So that's the other thing that I think we need, that we can look at, that we are looking at as we are moving forward in making these recommendations and kind of trying to figure out what schedule is right. What do we continue to offer? Because one of the things we know, we do not want to lose dual enrollment classes. We know those are important to our families. We know those are important to board members. We know those are important to our kids. And so those are some of the things that we are looking at. The other piece, now,
How does this not be equal 20?
because those are our current offerings, this is with, the science department did an awesome job this year. And they took and developed some courses that are outside the box. And so
But they've never been taught.
they've never been taught, no.
How many offerings do we have that are taught? Is that the 15
That
here?
would be the 15 there.
So we'd have 15 in.
Yes, this is for
Okay.
next year. And so all of these though too are for next year for
Oh.
those districts. One of the things that you'll see with Waverly is they're actually going down to 8. They had a few other courses. They are eliminating all courses that do not meet the grade level requirements. So if they have a freshman level course, they expect all freshmen to take that freshman biology course or freshman earth science. And so that is one of the things that they have eliminated are any other courses that are not at that grade level and reduce those. The other thing that, when I was talking to Waverly, is that they do not offer high school courses with fewer than 10 students. So they are really trying to streamline and simplify, and that is throughout all their courses. So even their elective courses, where sometimes I think in some of our elective areas, we have a lot going on and maybe too many courses. So, you know, that is something for us to look at as also as we move forward and continue to move forward as a district. But the other piece I wanted to put up there was the budget piece, because I think that's also an interesting part too, is looking at which districts are equalized, which districts and where the levies are, because that does impact us. And that does, it is not at the point in time where we can go and say, okay, let's just raise our levy a cent to add in $100,000 to our budget, or 2 cents to add in that $200,000 to our budget. And so that's kind of where we are, and those are the pieces that, as we looked at it, we wanted to make sure we had a picture that showed some of the different pieces as well.
Did Blair have a levy override to come up with that 1.499? Or should that be 1.0?
Oh, that should be 1.0,
Yeah.
sorry, that's my fault.
Yeah, it should be one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so I thought
Yeah,
the only
you're
way
like,
they
well,
could do that is to have an override.
And a 50-cent
vote.
override is rather large.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it is. So,
Can we do
yeah.
that?
Yeah,
for a
we'd
year.
love to.
We'd love to.
I know, we wish.
Which is an option.
Yes, it is. Yes, sorry about that. So, yeah, so those are some of the data pieces, but, you know, like, we've worked with administrators, we've talked to counselors, we've come up with some different options, but I'm gonna turn it over to our administrators, Mr. Jarash, to add in. You can, it's up to you. To add in, you can come to the hot seat, you can stay back there, we'll listen, yes. To add in other pieces that, we have looked at.
All right, I think we'll start talking about middle school. We have a social studies position. Last year, when, give you a little background, when Mr. Campbell retired, the board office actually wanted me not to fill that position. I lobbied them repeatedly. I still had a class of about 175 to 180, and that would make, if we eliminated the position then, that would make some classes excessive for numbers. And so they agreed to let me fill the position of social studies on a possibly temporary basis, depending on what the situation was in the coming year, where we took an elementary school teacher and moved them into that position. The possibility of knowing that that position would be there the next year. And so I think that's the background on it. So even last year, as I was lobbying for that position to be filled, I came up with a schedule. And is it something that we want to do? Do we want to reduce a staff member and increase class sizes? No. Does the board office want to increase class sizes? No. But sometimes it's necessary. I suppose if you don't want to go into debt, if there doesn't come a time when we have to borrow money to run a school district. And so with that recommendation, I did not knock on the door and say, hey, I got a recommendation, let's reduce a staff member at the middle school. But they remembered the situation and thought, well, with the bigger class moving on to the high school and maybe a class of 155 coming in, so maybe a change of 25 kids, my lobbying of why to keep the position last year kind of now is tough for me to continue with. And so I do have a schedule that I can run. Do I particularly like it? No. Do they like it? No. How I like to refer to it as probably the best not so good idea that I could come up with. Will my teachers like it? No. Especially the teacher that now doesn't have a position. But it's going to increase class size. Just let me explain to you a little bit how that would work. Right now we have, of course, core classes, or 4 cores. We have core class that are quarter classes that are standards classes, that standards that we don't get to, state standards we don't get to during the regular core classes. Mr. Schluter years ago began the quarter core or the standards classes, which helped us reach all standards, which helps us with the state testing, of course. What we would do if we reduce the position in social studies basically is just not have the standards class in social studies, and then I'd redo the schedule so that we'd only have those standards classes in math, science, and language arts. Those just happen to be the classes that we were tested in. And so what that would do was, instead of having, how it works now, let's say student A, sixth graders A, has core classes first period. And let's say they have their quarter standards class second period. There's 4 of each. And so that makes for an even schedule. There's 8 classes available for every grade level, every period, except for one, I'll get to that. And so it makes the schedule even. How that would change would be, there's four classes first period, then second period they'd go to 3 quarter core or standards classes the next period. Now, so half the class would be in quarter classes, which would be third classes now, and the other half would be in their core. So what that means is, if you've got 160 students, 80 of them would be in their core class that period, 80 of them would be in their standards class. Well, that's 80 divided by 3. And so it'd be about 26, 27 kids average in those classes. Would teachers like it? No. Could they do it? Is it doable? Yes. Would it make their job more difficult? Yes. Would it be happy about it? No. But again, they're professionals, and they would do the best job they can, or they could do, with those students. I have confidence that they do that. Would they be happy right away? No. Does that make sense? Now, our 5th period, I use all my PE teachers, I've got 2 of those. I use my exploratory teachers and my reading teachers to do lunchroom supervision. I need 4 of them per lunch, and so it works out. Actually, Mr. Junker, that's when he does his AD, and so I use the band teacher to fill in. So I've got 4 people, 2 in the gym, 2 in the cafeteria, to handle 200 kids, 250 kids. And so that's how that works. So I need all my core teachers just to teach core classes, 5th period. Right now I've got 7 8th grade teachers, 6 7th grade teachers, and 6 6th grade teachers, which means 6 divided by 160, you're talking 26, 27 average. So they're doing it now. They can do it. I know they can do it. Are they happy about it? No, but they do it. Because that's what we're asking them to do, and they're professionals. And they do a darn good job at it. They do the best job they can. You don't say, well, 27 kids, I'm not going to try. I've had enough. No, they might, I would think like that for a second and say, no, wait a second. I'm going to get the job done no matter what. So do you understand how those numbers works? Where some classes look like, well, that's a real manageable class, but 5th period they're going to have 28 on average. So I've got to make sure there's 30 desks in some of those little rooms. So can it be done? Yes. Am I happy about it? No. They be happy about it? No. Probably right now it's the best, not so good idea, but yeah. Because that's the way things are.
One of the other things that Mr. Gerard and Mr. Hickey have been doing is also looking at different scheduling too. So they've been looking at different, flexible scheduling, what can we do at the middle school, maybe a little different than what we currently do.
If I would have to cut 2 teachers for this next year, it would take a revamping the entire schedule. That would allow us to look at some different things that we've really wanted to do for years, which might be full year PE, full year reading or reading type class. But it would take elimination of those standards classes. And we would try to lengthen our periods to make up for it. But that, for us to do that next year, to have every teacher revamp all their curriculum at this point, would be a little bit tough. But that's what we'd be looking for if we're planning on getting rid of that science job next year.
So under this current, with the social studies teacher that moved up from elementary, would they move back down to elementary? Is there openings? Is there?
There are going to be openings from elementary position that will be available. Yes.
Is it back to where they came, or was it
That's
different
where
grade?
they came from. I don't know if they need her where they came from, but
It would not be back to the same.
again, you would have to look at all of your staff and what would be the best person for that position. So
What would be educationally the the benefits and the challenges of having longer classes in middle school for students.
You mean longer time period?
Yes, because you're saying, and plus eliminating the
Probably what we-
standards-based
In that
classes.
case, in that case, we'd probably like them to date back to where it was before I added exploratory, ninth period activities and interventions. And there would just be more time for core, which is what a lot of buildings do, that's what a lot of schools do. I mean, it's different than we've done,
What is what's FCS?
family consumer science.
Well, I know that, but is that a core class? Is that an exploratory class?
Core is math, science,
But are you
social studies.
eliminating exploratory classes?
No. Core classes, which are, one of them, and this is one of the reasons, Mr. Niss has done a great job implementing STEM. That's a quarter standards class, core class. And so we would redo the entire curriculum and include that into our core class.
Because I was wondering when you implemented the standards classes, what was the impact on the testing that was done?
That was done way before, I mean, Randy Slater implemented that a long time ago.
Okay,
So
because
would
I
not
wondered
be
what
able to-
type of, what impact it might have on the testing. of the
Well, you know, when
students.
we went 7 years ago, when we reduced because of attrition, 5 teachers at the middle school and got rid of the whole team concept, it basically became a junior high school. Our scores dipped, but now they're back up to where they were.
So we might see some fluctuation a year,
Yeah,
for a year
yeah,
or
it's
two.
gonna be a
and then
change,
back
it's gonna
up.
be different.
Yeah.
Anytime there's change, whether it's good change or whatever, you usually see a dip.
Mhm.
And then, you know, again, that's something we want to do. I don't want to tell my teachers we're going to be one less person after reducing 5 teachers 7 years ago and going away from the team concept.
I noticed how equalized you were.
Well, we got the schedule kind of where we want it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very equalized.
And now for a
That's
year,
because
and I
the
just,
same.
I want it
English
2
is-
years in a
all the
row
kids are
on
on
the same
the
schedule,
So
which
with,
I'm not going to have.
so John, with obviously Mr. Niss leaving, right, Niss,
Mhm.
how, I mean, what are you looking at here by pushing that off to the next school year? I mean, so would we hire a one-year
No,
science teacher?
we have a 5th grade teacher that teaches a lot of 5th grade science.
Oh,
Yes,
you did say that,
And fifth grade
sorry.
has to go down from.
And so,
it's
and
currently
they have an
fifth grade,
excess there,
section.
so we would move that person up, but then that excess would be down there later. Then I would, and Mr. Hickey and I, who has done a great job helping me out this year with all this stuff, we would come up with, back to the drawing board schedule. We'd be looking at a lot of different schools, we already have looked at some things. But that would be such a major change, starting in March for next year. Plus the numbers. I'm gonna also lose 160 then, and then have 140 come in. And so it'll be less numbers that year, but the problem is it goes up and down. So if we could, I'm not saying it's possible, we could find a schedule that's more flexible, where I can move teachers around easier, but that would require maybe a science teacher teaching PE, or you know, to make it flexible. Hey, I hate to do this, but you're teaching science, but also you have a math class. If you're endorsing that, I know you don't want to, but
Great questions. Great questions.
we've thought about it. We've tried, we've thought. We've tried to find a schedule ever since we got rid of teams that everybody likes. The one we have now is pretty good.
It looks good on paper.
But right,
I've probably taken more time than I should for one position. But it's important, you know what, but it's important. It's important to one person.
it's important
It's
to have the
important to
discussion.
everyone, though.
That's
It's not-
right.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
As far as the high school, as Jackie and Jason have said, they've challenged us as administrators to think outside the box and to think differently, think different against the norms. And so a couple things I'd like to share with you that I've done to try to accomplish that is, first thing, maybe you can still see Norris is having med tech taught through SEC. One of the first things that I've been working on and been looking at is trying to maybe develop a better partnership with Southeast Community College. If these changes that we're talking about tonight, if they continue, or if there's not changes in the funding system, this could be an ongoing situation for schools in the future. So what we want to look at is how do we think differently about our students, and especially our seniors. And when they get to the point as seniors where they have met a lot of the graduation requirements, and we also know that getting them on college campuses is one of the best indicators of them going on and pursuing post-secondary education. I began conversations with SEC, and those conversations are very, very beginning, but some of the things that I'd like to share with the board is they are very excited about their new facilities. They are constructing a wonderful new campus out here on the edge of town, and they would like us to consider developing more partnerships with them, not just through the CENCAP Career Academy programs, but even opportunities for our students to leave Beatrice High School, travel not very far, and take classes on the college campus. So one of the things that we've looked at, and everything that would help with that has really been a stick in the mud, so to speak, with working with them in the past, has been they're going to go away from their quarter system and go to a semester system. And that is going to open up some more opportunities that we would not be very smart not to look at. And so we've started looking at those. They have a desire to work with us more than maybe in the past that I've sensed, and they are willing to practice more flexibility. So I wanted you to know about that. We don't have anything set in stone at this point. We don't have any set classes, but as we continue to look outside the box, if certain classes could be taught off our campus for our seniors that can work that into their schedules, that can work, let me say that again, it's for our seniors that can work that into their schedules, then we're going to look at how we could possibly get some of our students off our campus and take classes out there. Those would be obviously dual enrollment classes, which we don't want to get rid of. And those would be classes that would give those kids a chance to experience college, even if they're not in the CENCAP program.
I have multiple concerns that I'd like you to address about that. How does a student get there that does not have a vehicle?
We haven't worked through that yet, either of our
I
districts.
mean, I think that's really important that we consider that, because I would hate to see us offer something to just some students.
Well, right, if we're not even saying we're going to enact this in the next year, but I want you to know that we are beginning those conversations. And I don't think we're anywhere close to finalizing that. Whether our district would provide a bus that would take kids out at a certain time. Of course, a lot of our kids do drive and have their own cars.
But I also remember driving children out there, students out there. They couldn't get there.
Lincoln Public Schools does that right now with a lot of their students that attend Southeast Community College there.
So if we were able to identify a certain timeline, a time frame when those classes will be offered, we could look at offering transportation to our students. The same situation would exist that we have now, where students would pay half tuition. Then we also talked about books and what the cost of those books are. Would the school be involved? We had a meeting with Bob Morgan and Aaron May, and I've continued to have conversations with Aaron May the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted you to know that's another thing that we'll continue to look at and try to come up with. We don't want to take anything away from the offerings we have with our teachers at the high school, but in some cases, if we can't offer something, then we would look at, well, how can we still provide those opportunities for our kids?
I love that you're looking at that option. I had that option in high school, and it was one of the best experiences that I had.
There are schools that are in close proximity to community colleges that have developed what I'm talking about initially, and do allow their students to reach out and take classes either of the children's choice, or that there's just a blanket of classes that are offered. And even they can go back and connect that to the Career Academy, which, Doris, I know you worked for them, so I know you're supportive of the Career Academy program.
But I also know that we have, I think currently, when a student is at the high school and they take a dual credit class, they don't have to take it for credit. so they get that rigorous experience. But if they can't afford to pay for
Sure.
the credit, I would hate to see us eliminate that and only those students who can afford to pay for college credit and have transportation there.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that
Right.
opportunity taken away from kids.
Right, and then
You know,
even,
currently.
even with some of the funding, you know, the ACE scholarship has been something we utilize, but there's been times where the ACE scholarship funds are very limited or are not there. So there's a lot of moving parts to
Right.
this. I just wanted to share with you tonight that that's something that we have begun to look at. As far as the science position, we go through a process every spring where our students sign up for classes they want to take. Those classes are developed in the fall of the year and put into our registration handbook. I don't know what a lot more I can tell you about that. More than Jackie and Jason have said, we've gone through that process. We've looked at what students have signed up for. Our science department worked hard with Jackie to come up with approximately 5 new courses that we were very excited about and are very excited about because they are classes that we think students would want to take. They're interesting to students. They are classes that at least Mr. Henning has taught some of those when he taught at Norris, and we were excited about those opportunities. So we've looked at all the different numbers. We've looked at different ways of possibly teaching that with one less teacher. When we have on the board here that we would look at any other position at the high school. We don't have any other resignations at this time, but I can tell you that I have been looking at those registration numbers to look and see where we might, if a resignation would come up, or how we might do that. We have not hired our industrial tech position that we have open at this time. I would like the board to know that I would like to try to maintain our teachers teaching 6 out of 8 periods of the day. I've called other schools. That's pretty much the norm when it's an 8-period day. And having those soft assignments and having the things that come with those are valuable. So I'd like to maintain that and not make the mandate that we would look at 7 out of 8 periods. And basically, whatever's decided, I'm ready to develop a plan and move forward and do what we can to help our students be most successful. So I would be open to any more questions or concerns you might have.
So what have you kind of looked at, you know, like Mr. Drosh kind of had somewhat of a plan?
You know, and I was asked yesterday, what are we going to teach? Well, I can tell you that I'm not done. What we do, Eric, is we typically have our teachers look at numbers, so we give those numbers to not just our science teachers, but all of our teachers. What they do, and they do a great job of, is they look at it and they kind of come up with an idea and a plan, and I'll meet with those PLC leaders for those departments, and we'll look at it. If it's something that I think we can do and makes sense, or is similar to what we've done in the past, that would. Bottom line, I'm the one who's going to make a decision. Okay, so if that meets my approval, we move forward and we start working on the master schedule. When I was asked yesterday, what are we going to teach? I'm not prepared to say. We haven't worked through that. But I can tell you it depends on different lenses and different eyes and how you look at it. And so we've got some different ideas. I know the science department is going to request a chance here in a little bit to speak to you, and they've looked at it. So you'll see a couple different options and things. And I guess I would say this to you as board members, there may be a 3rd or 4th option out there that's the best that we would still need to look at. So I think it just depends on how you look at it and in what position you're in. And those conversations are always very good for the most part as to what we think would be best for our students. Sometimes those conversations don't necessarily lend themselves to what might be best for what the staff thinks. I mean, I'm not going to keep saying what John said, but I think there's times where you have to just say this is what we're going to need to do. And that we also would look at numbers of preps. So we don't want teachers teaching a ton of different preps. We also would look at the best we can our numbers so that we kind of have all our teachers within the department teaching about the same number of kids. That gets dicey when you start having dual enrollment classes because those classes tend to be smaller. And then you get, all those things have to be lined up with a teacher that has the certification to do that. not all of our teachers can teach dual credit. And so I have to look at if we're gonna offer that in-house, as Doris said, then I have to look at what that teacher can teach or what teachers can teach those. And then I can't always make sure that the numbers match up the greatest. And that's where we get some discrepancies on this teacher teaches 130 kids and this teacher teaches 90 kids. But I don't wanna get rid of dual credit because of that.
I think that's been beneficial. Another question, similar to what Waverly, you noted there is, they look at if there's a minimum class size. Do we have that? Do you take that into consideration?
Yeah, we've had classes in the past that we've not taught, and I can't say there's a magic number, but I can tell you the number's usually around 5 or 6. What typically happens when that happens is I'll go to the teacher and say, listen, there's only 5 or 6 kids signed up for this class. And that happened last year with special topics. And all of a sudden, that seems like what happens then is the word gets out amongst the kids, and then more kids sign it, or the teacher starts advocating for that class. The next thing you know, we end up with a special topics class that's got 15 kids in it that was at 5. So for those classes, that seems like that kind of works out that way in the past. But there have been classes over my principalship that we've just said we can't teach. This teacher time does not allow us to teach 3 or 4 kids. But is there a set number? No, I don't. That would be hard to stick with that, I think, in all cases. Would you like to see some different ideas that what we've been put together?
I would, yes.
They'll be-
We've even upgraded our technology in John's, so we have pointers now in the last 15 minutes.
So here are some of the different options that you can see.
I would say this, these do include, these were submitted both by Jackie and I know the science department, and you're going to see teachers' names. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's where, that goes into that, who can teach certain classes and who can't. And I guess I want to share to not only the teachers that are here, but also to you as board members, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be locked in. Okay, that's what I enjoy about it. Can move things around. Who would like to teach that class, or who has experience teaching that class? So that part's not set in stone. None of it is.
No, that's the
Names
thing
are not set in stone. I mean, I wish we were just taking those off, but we
They
didn't.
just
So,
remove them now.
okay, so that's the. Go ahead, Jackie.
So you have 2 different ones, and as you look at them, you notice that the top one, we still continue to offer, we have anatomy and physiology, physics, advanced bio. Those are 3 of our current dual enrollment courses. Integrated physical and chemistry are 2 classes that we're not registered for, so we'd have to figure out where we move the kids from current classes to this if we chose to adopt something similar to this course offering.
What she means by that, those 2 classes were not on the registration sheet this year for our kids to sign up for. Those were 2 classes that our science department wanted to eliminate. Okay, we're going to offer those 2. But in that plan, those two classes have shown back up, and I'll let Mr. Henning probably explain that to you with the science team.
The one thing that this top one is missing for the dual enrollment, because you'll see the bottom one is our zoology and botany class. Our zoology and botany class is a current dual enrollment course. And so in the bottom one, you will see that here's an option with the 4 current dual enrollment courses that we have in it. The other pieces, you'll notice these blue courses. These blue courses, and you're going to notice that right here, this schedule is overloaded. And there's a reason why, because there's an or in there. So we have to make a choice as to we either teach this or we would teach this. So for example, AP Chem is right now at 8 students. So again, do we look at it and say, at this point in time with AP Chem, we're going to not offer it this year, we'll bring it back next year. And if you look at the schedules, can the students still take physics? Do they have anatomy and physiology that they can take? Can they take another science course? Because your AP Chem students are students that are higher level, so you're going to look for what other higher level courses maybe they haven't explore it and can they explore it? And instead of that AP Chem, could we look at adding that intro to physics and intro and that STEM course? I know the intro to chemistry and intro to physics was a great addition of courses that we looked at as semester courses, just helping our kids get into those concepts and really see it before they dive deeper into something. And so it is a nice way to add in those courses that the science teachers created, because you know what? We also want to make sure that we get everyone interested in science. Science is awesome. But sometimes if I just go through that regular biology class, I don't see how cool it is, even though we know that Mrs. Kaderis does an awesome job with biology and with cells and everything else. But sometimes I don't see how cool science is, and maybe forensic science might really grasp my attention, and I might go deeper into science.
Can you tell me if Waverly, when you had that chart up there, you know, about they're eliminating all the, so do they just have a chemistry class?
Yes.
Every child just takes a chemistry
Yes.
class?
Every child takes
Okay.
they have,
A biology class,
Biology,
a
they have
chemistry
earth
class, there's
science.
no differentiation
No.
between those. And physics, they just take physics. And
if
they don't have that
yeah.
opportunity for intro to physics.
Maybe, I'm assuming that you understand, like, if you look at those 6/6 and then below there, those are the classes per semester.
Right.
And the number of
So,
sections.
I didn't know, I want to make sure you're understanding that.
The one piece over here is you will also notice that, so we've kind of have a couple of courses highlighted, because one of the things that we have to also evaluate is, okay, we have this number of students that are not going to be able to take this course. So if you look at astronomy and wildlife biology, those are two new courses that we have developed. Notice that we put a B over here and we put A's. So one of the ideas that we have posed is, do we teach these two on the A year, these two on the B year? So a junior could take these two, or take one of them A year and then take another one B year. So they would still have them open to them, but we would just rotate and provide an option. But that also then leaves us with these extra students that we have to figure out now, what science class do we make sure that they are in? How do we work the schedule? So that is one of the things that we've been working with our counselors. And I looked at Mr. Post, Mr. Krasowski, and I said, okay, here's the question. Can we do this or not? And they both said, Jackie, it will work. And I said, okay, I just need to know that it will work. I need to know that you guys will be able to handle it, that you guys will be able to do this, because I want to make sure that these opportunities are there as well. AP Computer Science, we have also talked about that too, and we have looked at different options there. Maybe looked at, you know, does it fit in our information technology realm? Because this could fit into the information technology realm, because it is an information technology course too.
Is that
So-
typically taught by the science department?
Not necessarily. In some schools it probably
I
is, in
don't
some
know.
schools it's probably not.
It's a new course that we've
It's
offered this year. It doesn't
It's
count.
usually taught
Doesn't
by
count for science
businesses
credit.
or information tech, I would say.
I just didn't know. I don't know.
That
Yes.
class could possibly also fit into it.
Information technology. Mhm.
That course could also fit into an industrial tech setting, depending
Yes.
on what teachers' qualifications you would have.
It fell into math in my school,
Fill in the map.
not sports, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different areas that you can put it in, and the nice thing is, Mrs. Hines has done an awesome job with that. That's a brand new course this year, and so again, we don't want to lose this course. That's why we are trying to think about where else can we place it, because we know that computer programming is huge for our students, and we know that there are pieces that they get here that we didn't have before this, and so, yeah, we are trying to find ways to not lose, because that is our goal. So here are some ideas. I know that the science teachers have different ideas too, and that's where, how do we continue to work together to come up with the best idea? Because this may not be the best idea, the other one may not be the best idea, but what can we develop so it is the best idea?
And I would close, and I'll go sit down, but I would close and say by, like I said before, whatever's decided, we'll develop a plan and we'll make it work. The two plans that we showed you, there may be a better third, there may be a better fourth, there may be a totally different plan that is not even being on display here tonight that would be best. And that's where I would look forward to working with our team if we're forced to do that. Okay?
And obviously, this plan, A1 covers our state, what's required.
Yep, yes.
And then beyond that, we're looking at variety, creativity, just different offerings.
Any other questions for me? Thank you.
And I just want to say before I leave, in no way do I want to make light of the young schools one position. For 7 years, I've been trying to find a good schedule at the middle school since we went away from teams. I see schedules in my sleep. I wake up and I see and I think about how schedules are going to affect people, and I can't get back to sleep. So it's not that it's ever taken like this, so I apologize for that. I do want to say I'm very proud of my staff. I had a staff member come into my office not too long ago, and when you have staff members that notice when you're stressed and say, "What's up? You okay?" Just stress about the schedule. And when they say, "Hey, you know what? It'll not be, we're not going to like it, but we just want you to know what we did." That makes it worth it as an administrator. So, thanks.
I'm not up there anymore, but I'm proud of our staff also. They're great.
Well, you didn't say something stupid.
Yeah, it's as we talked in our faculty meeting yesterday, it's not the norm, and that it causes us to think outside the box, and it's a big who moved my cheese story, so we'll have to figure things out.
All right, so I will bring us all back, and as we do that, I will say, first of all, you can see through this discussion, it's been very transparent, been very open, with a lot of opportunity to ask questions, which there still is, that it's very complex as well. And we've challenged our principals, we've challenged our staff members to think differently than what we ever have before, because we're being forced to. This is, and I will reiterate that this isn't something that I want to do, but it's something that we're in a position we're going to have to do. So, great questions on your part. If you have more, we can certainly cover them. I want to make sure and give this topic enough time. Time is important for us to make sure that we do a thorough job of discussing it. Obviously, a couple of points that I think are important to bring up before we totally close it down is that there will still be positions to fill. I want to make that clear, because obviously as either people move or decisions are made to retire or resign, we still have those positions we have to fill. So, but we're going to look at each one of them very detail-oriented and determine how does this, if we don't fill it, how does it impact? But, so don't for a minute think that we're not going to have more positions that we have to look at. I want to make it also known that because of the changes that SEC has made, which are game changers for us, it's an opportunity that literally is a game changer. And as I think, and I sit here and I think about it from an educational standpoint, and my experience, I started in a 2-year college and got an Associate of Arts degree. I knew I wanted
You should be drawing better than that.
Yeah, I should be drawing better than that. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I got my Associate of Arts degree. I got my Bachelor of Arts degree from Chadron State College. I got my Master's degree from Kearney. I worked my way up the chain. There is absolutely nothing wrong with 2-year colleges. There's absolutely nothing wrong with starting there and working your way up. And it is so much more affordable. So, because SEC has moved to semester courses, there is an opportunity here for our high school seniors getting them set their feet on the ground in college preparedness to explore that right in our own backyard. So without getting too much deeper into detail, it makes sense. And it's affordable for parents. And we can work with them on how to get kids out there. The other thing that I would say, because SCC is willing to articulate their curriculum with us and our curriculum with them, there's also opportunity for our teachers that are willing to teach dual credit courses which may result in a little extra work and a few more extra kids in their classes on campus. SEC is willing to pay them 40% of the tuition that comes in from those students based on the number of kids that they have in a course. So you take a course of 25 students that are taking AP chemistry, that are taking, dual credit chemistry, dual credit physics, dual credit college English. You fill your course with those kids that are taking those and paying for the college tuition at half price for their families and themselves, getting the credit, and our teachers can get paid 40% directly from Southeast Community College. Wow, that's an opportunity. Okay? Last, as we go about through all this, there's a timeline for hiring that we have to be aware of, and with whatever decisions are made in moving forward, and this is a topic that we've discussed extensively, is that as we move forward, time is of the essence, because if we are, and we know we're going to have positions that we have to fill, we're advertising for teachers right now, that with every day that passes, we could be losing out on an opportunity to hire the best candidate for a position, so just keep that in mind. Okay? Before I close with that, do you have any other questions that we can answer? Because I do have a little bit more closure to put in here.
I just have a comment about the, I guess, expanded opportunities, with the Southeast Community College. Both my kids had taken, dual credit courses, whether it was with Southeast or my two older kids, or with Peru State. But I think expanding those opportunities beyond the CENCAP or dual credit courses, the third child, next year when she went to sign up for her junior year, was limited. There was a class that she wanted to take, but because of her other course selections that she took and does not want to give up, that didn't fit into the schedule. So, now if that class was available to take at a different hour, at a different location, maybe then she would be able to take that course, because she's, she was, a little disappointed that she couldn't work that into her schedule, but she doesn't want to give up, because there are some classes that are set for second, third, whatever hours that is. So, so I think that's a great opportunity for the kids too. So.
Yeah, it's been a game changer in terms of our discussions and abilities to work with a higher institution in our own backyard. Is it going to be perfect for everybody? No. But does it offer an opportunity for some that may not have been there? Yes, and I think we'd be crazy not to start working with families and parents more closely to educate them. And it's going to take a while. Like Mr. Suter said, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to take a while to educate people on it and families. But if we've got to start somewhere, and with them going to semester courses versus quarter courses, man, it's crazy the opportunity that exists there. So,
I think one thing, Mr. Garash, that I think would be interesting to see would be what that potential alternate schedule would look like. Knowing that you couldn't implement it for next year, but if we have to sit and have this discussion next year, then at least
right.
there's maybe an idea in the future of what that could mean to your middle school.
And it's so interesting because Blair School's cut a number of teachers this year, and I got a call from the Blair principal, and I'm thinking, well, good. When I have him on the phone, I'm asking him about his schedule. Well, he was calling me for a copy of my schedule. And so it's, we're not the only place.
Right. And I think that's an important part. I'm glad that part of the discussion came out, because we aren't the only school that's going through this. Lincoln Public Schools won't fill some vacancies up to $15 to $20 million of their budget. Blair cut 17 positions a year ago, they're cutting 10 now, reducing 10. I should say that we use the word cutting, I apologize, but reducing 10. Because they don't have a choice. Their ability to turn on the faucet for revenue is shut off, and as input costs become greater, that ability is not there to continue to operate at that level. That's the bottom line. This isn't Mr. Alexander making these rules. That's how it is. So I think that's important to figure out. You saw York up there. York is doing the same thing we already are doing, and that's trying to reduce expenses through attrition, because it's the most humane thing to do. That's that's what we see as the most humane thing to do. So, in closure, keeping all these things in mind, I would just say that this is not awesome. I'm going to steal the words from Dr. Mark Adler, because he always says, you know, it's not awesome, but it's what we're forced to do. And no one here wants to do it. Dr. Nielsen doesn't want to do this. I know our principals, you've heard them say it's not what they want to do. I know our staff doesn't want to do it. It's not what I want to do. But again, it's the position we find ourselves in. And for parents and patrons and teachers and everybody that's here, I would say that it's a battle we're in every day to protect and preserve public education at this point, because it is the great equalizer in our society. Public education is the great equalizer. But for whatever reason, it's constantly under attack for overspending, not doing its job, and that simply isn't the case, and you can see it here. And you can see it in our annual audit reports that we are not overspending. We've underspent our budget. But because the revenue source is not being provided by through our state funding, we're not left with a lot of other choices. And our taxpayers have carried the burden. They have. They've shouldered the lion's share of responsibility for the past X number of years. Now it's the state's turn to step up. So as you sit here and you listen to this discussion, I encourage you to get in touch. We're fortunate to have Senator Dorn as our representative. He understands this. He recognizes it. We have people like Don Schuler that understand and recognize this. We have good representation here. They want to hear from you. So let them hear from you. Let them know what's going on. Quite frankly, a lot of the career politicians that are in our legislature right now are tired of hearing from us superintendents, because we're hired guns coming in to push our agenda to spend more money. And that's not the case. So we need your help in that battle that we're in every day. And I don't mean to lecture, but I'm pleading with you to understand that. So I challenge you to be a voice for your students. I challenge you to be a voice for your kids. I challenge you to be a voice for our school. And as I said earlier, we're fortunate to have Senator Dorn, who I think will do that for us. But I think we also have to be talking to our senators that are in charge of the Education Committee, Senator Groen, that are in charge of the Revenue Committee, Senator Linehan, that are writing the legislation right now, the OB 974, that is not good legislation and will have a detrimental impact to all schools, but Beatrice Public Schools extensively. And there are other schools that are on that list too. So I can provide email addresses for you. Lastly, I would just say, I can't say enough thanks to Dr. Nielsen, to our principals, to our staff, the ones that have worked with us to come to a solution, or resolutions that we can make operable in moving forward and still provide opportunities for our kids. And that's what we're trying to do. So thank you to those people that have done that. The hours of conversation, meetings, can't even begin to tally how much that would be, but it wouldn't be possible without what they've done. That's all I have.
I think before we move on, I'd like to make clear that I'm not opposed to students getting college credit in high school at all. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but I want that same level of enthusiasm. I want to hear that same level of dedication to kids in the trades, because all I hear is we need people in the trades, we need people in the trades, we need people. And I'm hearing that we don't have a teacher yet in that position, and also that I want all students to have access to opportunities. You know, and we have a high free and reduced rate, and it's not going down. So I think we need to look at making sure that whatever plan we come up with, that all students have equal access to that plan. This is the proper time. Do you have any other questions? Anybody have any? This is the proper time for public questions and comments on any topic, and we have two people that would like to address the board tonight. Dave Henning is going to go first. You want to come up here?
Hi. I got a handout for you too, since I just wanted to look at the drafts to start as a science teacher. Oh yeah, sure, there's plenty of that. And some of it's similar to what I think you've seen on some of the other charts. So I'm just gonna read a written statement just so I make sure I cover everything I wanted to cover in a brief amount of time. My name is Dave Henning, and I am a science teacher at the high school. This is my first year teaching in the district, but my connection to Beatrice Public Schools runs deep. I graduated from BHS in 2003, and my mom, Pam Henning, retired last year after working in the district as a teacher and administrator for over 20 years. So it is with this connection to Beatrice that I come before you today with my concerns about the possibility of reducing our science staff at the high school. Before coming to Beatrice for this year, I taught high school science at Norris. The science department at Norris looked to the Beatrice Science Department as a shining example of course offerings. And in fact, we used Beatrice's science department as a model when we revamped the Norris science curriculum. So I was excited when a position came open in the district and I was able to come home to Beatrice, a district that clearly has a very strong science department and a history of offering a lot of options to their students. I was even more excited when during the interview process, I understood that Beatrice wanted to develop courses that got kids excited about science. And increased enrollment and interest in taking more than the state required 3 years of science. During my very brief time in the department, we have worked really hard as a department to understand what science courses students are interested in taking. And we did this by polling the student body. We took the results of that poll and we developed what we consider to be four new, very engaging and rigorous semester science classes for next year. And some of those are listed on the bottom of that informational sheet there. Astronomy, forensic science, wildlife biology, and an engineering class called STEM. And you can see the enrollment in those classes was pretty good. And in fact, these classes were a big part of the increase in the total registered semesters of science that we saw. So in 2019-20, this school year, we had a total semester registration of 1,021 students. I don't even know if that's a real term, total semester registration, but I made it up. For next year, we have a total semester registration of 1,137 students, which is a more than 10% increase. So those classes, I think, did what they were supposed to do. They increased the interest in science. And it increased students' interest in taking more than just 3 years. That does a lot of things, and this isn't my written response, but just listening to things. Traditionally, what the classes we've offered, freshman and sophomore science, have been differentiated some, and that's where our course numbers are higher. Schools like Norris, where I was there, they didn't differentiate freshmen in science, so instead of having 6 sections for freshmen and sophomore, they just had 2 course offerings. But that really wouldn't change the number of sections we would have to offer based on our numbers. But what these new classes do is, what's traditionally happened is kids take their freshman and sophomore science, and then when they get to their junior year, that's where they start to have more options. And so they can start to take classes like advanced bio, AP Chem is more of a senior class, but juniors can't take it. Dual credit physics, dual credit anatomy and physiology, or if they don't want to take one of those dual credit classes, they've traditionally taken either chemistry, which is a kind of a basic chemistry class, or integrated physical science, which is a very basic science class designed to meet the 3-year requirement of the state. And so by eliminating chemistry and integrated physical science, our goal as a department wasn't just to increase the number of kids who took science, but also change the personnel in those classes. And so peer modeling was mentioned. One really cool thing about these new semester classes is, when you look through the list of kids registered, we have our very, very top achieving kids in like a STEM class, which is a hands-on engineering class, kids that have excelled in physics. And we also have kids that are currently taking integrated physical science this year. So those kids that would have never crossed paths before in their science education careers will get the chance to do that next year, which I think is really cool for peer modeling and for increasing the rigor of all of our students. So that's one thing that I think is really cool about the semester classes. And when we implemented the new semester classes at Norris, we saw the same thing, a huge jump in the number of kids wanting to take elective science. Anyway, moving on. The reality is, I think that the impact of reducing our staff to 4 members, which we've heard, if it happens, we will deal with it, but the reality is that we won't be able to offer many of these semester courses. It can be seen on the back of the sheet I handed you. I kind of set it up with 4 teachers versus 5 teachers. So just to kind of see the difference, and then down below, the classes that we wouldn't be able to offer. Now, in one model, we might be able to offer some forensics or some astronomy, but what we'll lose is that peer modeling because those classes will have to be set aside for kids who need their 3rd year of science. And so really, it'll be integrated physical science just rebranded as 2-semester classes. So we won't get the juniors and seniors won't have the options to take those classes in the same way just because of the numbers. It'll be reserved for junior students who need a 3rd year of science. So I think it limits our ability to offer it to the wide variety of students that we were hoping to attract. If we do not have fully staffed 5-member team, we'll struggle to offer very many of the classes beyond the state required 3 years. This not only applies to new elective courses, but also to some of the dual credit options like botany and zoology, and AP Computer Science, which it sounds like there might be a plan for. AP Computer Science, though, I would say, is a class that Paula has worked very hard and put in a lot of her own hours to develop, and a class that's super, super important for any of our students who are interested in furthering their careers in science, things like engineering, agriculture, and other fields. The reduction in force will also impact class sizes. That's just the unfortunate truth. If you look at the models I put together on the back here, with the 5-teacher model, integrated earth science would be 4 sections instead of 3. That would ensure that our numbers remain below 24 per section. And Diff Chem would also be 4 instead of 3, which would keep our classes around 19 instead of 24 would be the average. But in reality, as we all know, you're going to have maybe some classes of 21 and some classes of 27. So it'll result in classes, in our order to offer AP Chem, Advanced Bio, and Anatomy Physiology, we'll have to squeeze more students into our freshman and sophomore classes. And this will result in classes with more than 24 students per section. While this may not seem like a lot of students, it is important to remember that science, when taught with rigor, must include labs and hands-on experiences. In a report published in 2014, the National Science Teachers Association cites 2 important factors that affect a teacher's ability to conduct labs safely and effectively: class size and available space. The maximum number of students that can be safely supervised by a teacher in a high school lab setting is 24. The report cites several peer-reviewed articles that show that there is a significant increase in accidents in labs of students greater than 24. In addition, the report shows that lab space is also a crucial component to lab safety and effectiveness. In a classroom lab hybrid setting like we have at Beatrice High School, there should be 60 square feet of space per student. That's the standard set forth by the National Science Teachers Association. Our classrooms are approximately 1,100 square feet. This means that at 24 students, we have roughly 45 square feet of space per student, which is much less than 60, but we've managed it. In order to be at the safe space, we would have to have 18 students per section. This, according to 2 cited studies, increases our chance of lab accidents by having more than less than 60 square feet. So if we reduce our staff, we will have to either eliminate classes or increase class sizes, or both. In both cases, it is ultimately our students who will suffer the consequences, whether it is through increased class sizes and fewer labs and hands-on experiences, or through a reduced number of course offerings. Our students will not have the same opportunities with 4 science teachers as they would with 5. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, the Beatrice Science Department was looked at with envy by those teaching at Norris, and I'm sure other districts too. By reducing the number of teachers we have at 4, we would have, and this is on the front again, at this point, we would have the worst science teacher to student ratio in the 13 districts I surveyed. As a product of BHS myself, I can tell you that my experience as a senior, being able to take AP Chemistry in particular, set me ahead of my peers in college. I was among the most prepared students in my freshman classes at Hastings College because of the time I spent with Mr. Garland during my senior year of high school. That is ultimately, and that's why we're here. I mean, we're not here because we want to make our jobs easier. We're not here because we think the administration wants this to happen. We know you don't. We know no one wants this to happen. But the fact is that science classes, for us, are something we're very highly passionate about, and we felt like we needed to be here to speak to that. And we're not really worried about more work. In fact, if you look at the schedule, cutting it to 4 teachers would make it a lot less work for us. We'd each have 3 preps, and we'd be offering just the traditional pathway. By hiring another teacher, we're actually increasing our workload. We're willing to develop these classes. We want to offer these to our students. We want to have a wide variety of students experience these classes. And so we're not trying to save ourselves work in any way. We're here because we love our students. That's the bottom line, right? And we want what is best for them. We want to offer them engaging, rigorous classes that will stretch their minds and prepare them for whatever is next in their lives. All right, that was my real estate. So, I guess, yeah. I'm just really passionate about it, and I'm passionate about these classes because too often in high school, we get students tracked. And they get into a science class based on some test score at some point in their career. And it's so hard for them then to escape that track. And by increasing the options for science, we increase the chances that some of those kids that just otherwise wouldn't maybe ever have the opportunity to have a science class with a top-notch science student have that opportunity so that they can see what a science class like that looks like, what kids like that think like, and maybe they'll realize, hey, this is for me. A perfect example is botany. Botany is a class that this year has 47 students enrolled in. It's a class I teach. That enrollment is up from 10 to 12 in the past. So we have 47 students taking botany. That's a dual credit class. I'm able to offer dual credit to those students that want it. Of the 47 students taking it, 17 are taking it for dual credit. So what that means is if we switch to an SEC model, those 17 kids might go to SEC and get that class. But what would that leave the other 30? There are 30 kids in there that aren't taking it for dual credit, that are getting to experience a college-level class free of charge because we're able to offer it. And that's the kind of thing that I would just hate to lose. So, I think that's everything.
Thank you.
Yep.
What's going on? Can you speak?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Do not.
I don't have anything written like that, that's for sure.
But you got blonde hair, so.
Yes, I got blonde hair, and that's, little wrestlers, they make you do that kind of stuff. I wasn't planning on talking, and I thought I should. I've been here the longest, I think, of the science teachers, 20 years. And just a couple things is that as you reduce the teacher size, your class size is going to get bigger. And with science is different than social studies or English in that we want the opportunity for students to explore science as in the laboratory or in hands-on. And we're just doing the lab today. And just the excitement of boiling water, you would think boiling water, you know, but they just, you know, they get so nervous and they just have that opportunity if they go on later on that they might miss out on if a chemistry class goes from, you know, 22, 23 to 28 or 29. We just don't have I've got room for 24 students to do that. And that's just in chemistry. That's not in your other classes. That's not in biology class when you're doing dissecting and a lot of other things you're able to do. So I see going to 4 instead of 5, your classes are, like Mr. Henning said, just because of scheduling problems, we're not going to get an equal mix. So we might have, you know, 28, 29 in chemistry, and then we would not be able to do the things I'd like to do. Being selfish just in chemistry. And then also, I understand the opportunities they get through SEC, or they could get through SEC. But I know with like AP Chem, it's a very rigorous course. Students kind of shy away from that. You know, we do the best we can of pushing them to the best that they can do and taking more of a rigorous class. And it is a very difficult class to take, as well as AP Biology. And we just don't get the students we like to get. You know, if I get 7 or 8, that's a big group. I know 2 years ago in my son's class, we had 24, and that was such a fun class. I mean, that just never happen. But I mean, you just get feedback from students that take those rigorous classes, and now if numbers go down and there's 6 or 7, we might not offer it, or we might offer it alternate years. And if you offer alternate years, there's always going to be 2 or 3 individuals that are going to miss out. This is the way it is. You know, I can't take my junior year and senior year it's not offered, and it just kind of, that's just one of those things. And I know it affects a few students, but those few students really benefit, as Mr. Henry said. I had Mr. Henry my second year here, so it's interesting to see the maturity, I guess.
Now, I was gonna ask, is it good you can remember him from the second year?
I know exactly where he sat. You know, in the room, and in all those type of classes, you know, you just have a lot of fun with. And just not having an opportunity, maybe not having an opportunity, not saying that's not going to be the case, to teach those type of students are very rewarding. And like you said, you know, with the peer review, we just seem to have students that are middle to lower level, and they're all together, and they don't have role models. And if they get an opportunity to be in a class, it's a semester class, they're semester classes. They do, and he's seen that this year with botany. There's a calming effect, and they tend to work a little bit harder, they tend to not goof off as much, just because the other students in there want to do well, and there's that peer review, peer help, and that associated with that. So I guess that's all I wanted to say. You know, all the staff came today, and we, you know, just like any staff that's been together, you want the best for your kids in your area, and you're kind of selfish, and that's kind of what we are. We're kind of selfish today. We understand there's tough decisions have to be made, and we're glad we don't have to make those, because those are they're just tough to deal with and tough to do. So we understand. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Science Department, for A, being passionate, and B, being here. And unless there's further questions, I think that's.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that the Board of Education District 15 adjourn.
A second? Your votes, please, all those in favor.
Aye.
Motion passed.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yes.